Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. Oh my gosh, we're on volume 11 of Yona of the Dawn. Volume 10. Volume 10 was my jam. And I've taken a couple days off after reading volume 10. I had to take some time off, but I'm back and I'm so excited. I don't think I found out in the meantime when the third OVA, which is actually the first. I thought, so there's two OVAs that are happening between chapters 101 and 105. There's two OVAs. And then there's an OVA that's happening after chapter 70 and before chapter 71. But I don't think when we left off, we were at chapter 63 maybe. So I don't know if we're going to get to chapter 70 in this volume or if it's going to be volume 12. I think it's volume 12 is when we're going to get to the first OVA. So we'll find out in this. But if I get to the chapter where the OVA is going to start, then I'm going to pause this video and go watch the OVA and have that. So there's going to be that happening. But I'm really excited, y'all. I'm ready. I'm so hyped. I really am loving this manga, and I'm loving reading it because it's such a surprise and you don't know what's going to happen. And this manga in 2 volumes has had so much happen that it's crazy. Volume 9, we have Sheena's whole backstory expanded with his dragon, and then the last volume was Taejun's volume and introducing him back into the story and his relevance. So he's basically going to be fixing up the fire tribe for Yona while she moves on to the next tribe, right? We've had the earth tribe, and now we're going to move past the fire tribe and go try to help the rest of the world. So I don't know what to expect, honestly. Looking at this volume, it's a volume with Hawk and Yona on the cover, so... But that's such a mislead, right? Because it's such a misdirect, because volume 9 had Zeno and Yona, and last volume did have Taejun and Yona, so you can't really judge by the cover what the volume is going to be about, because even though volume 10 was about Taejun, and he was on the cover, volume 9 had Zeno, and he didn't really have much to do in volume 9, so... I don't know, but we are going to start this volume and see what all happens. I'm so excited, y'all. So let's just dive in. We're going to start Yona of the Dawn, volume 11, and we're going to start it here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my God. What is this manga? What is this series? What is my heart? What is happening? Oh my God. This is the most complicated love triangle I think I've ever read in a series. Ever. Because, oh my God, Mizuho Kusanagi, how do you do this? Oh my God, girl. Cause in any love triangle that I've ever read in a series, there is always there's clearly a couple that you root for, right? There's a couple that you root for, and you find and it's very easy, like if you find like couple A, if you have A, B, C, and you root for A, B, there is a clear and definitive reason why you don't want A to get with C. But in this story, Yona and Hawk and Soo-won, they are so closely tied together that they love one another so much. And it's not just Yona loving, it's so complicated, right? It's so complicated. And this first set of chapters with Yona getting kidnapped and Soo-won and Hawk working together to find her, it establishes it's so taxing on your heart because I ship Hawk and Yona so much. They're like, they've been like a one true pairing for me this whole time. But in these first few chapters, you see how much Soo-won and Hawk mean to each other. That I'm like, am I shipping Hawk and Soo-won together now? Maybe. But then and that's why it makes so much sense now why Hawk has been so frustrated when people bring up Soo-won. Because you get to see in this volume just how much Soo-won means to Hawk. And that's why this betrayal, why him killing King Il, like, hurts Hawk so badly. But it's not just that. Hawk respects and admires Soo-won so much, and he looks up to him so much, that when he sees... It makes sense now. It makes sense now why Hawk had resigned himself to being happy if Soo-won had married Yona. It makes sense now why he was going to be okay with it. Because he loves Soo-won so much, and he loves Yona so much, that if those two ended up together, he's like, as long as I can be with you two, I'm going to be okay with that. Right? But now, the problem is now Soo-won has betrayed their trust and forced and drove a wedge in between all three of them by killing King Il. And Hawk is like, and it's such a terse situation because we've come to realize just how bad King Il was at ruling. But it's one of those things where Hawk was loyal to King Il, and even though him and Yona loved King Il, so even though they're realizing, yeah, he wasn't a good ruler, and it is maybe better that Soo-won has taken over, it doesn't change the fact that Soo-won killed him and took a life away that they valued so much. So it's so hard because Hawk is like, I love Soo-won, but I can't forgive him for what he's done to Yona. But he sees that Yona still loves him, and he's like, I can't. He's like, how can I be selfish and put my own feelings onto Yona? Because he's come to realize that he's thought all these years that he had no chance with her. That he's like, I love her, but there's no way I will ever be with her. So I've resigned myself to the next best scenario. The next best scenario is that I will be her bodyguard, and her and Soo-won will be together. They love each other, and that's good enough for me. Because Hawk's a freaking saint. And it's just too good. And now that Soo-won is away, and there's this wedge, Hawk has slowly been letting himself come to terms with these feelings. And being like, I do love her, and if Soo-won is not going to be there for her, then I'm going to be there for her. But it's the most torturous thing because he's like, and all these years Hawk has teased her to try to make it seem like he likes her but doesn't love her romantically. He's been teasing her all this time, and that's why Yona thinks it's a joke. And now I think Yona's starting to realize it's not a joke. He does love her, and she's like, what am I going to do with this? Like, this whole time, like, she's loved Soo-won, and she still loves him. A part of her still loves him, but when she says she's never going to wear the hairpin again, she's like, he betrayed that love. And she's like, I can't stop loving him, but he's not here for me, and he killed my father, and I can't forget that. And so she's heartbroken. And that moment, God, when he puts his hand on top of hers, on top of the box, it's like signifying that he understands her love for him, but it's like, my love's here too. But then he's like, I told you I wasn't going to joke around until you ask for it. I'm not. It's like Hawk's he's acknowledging her consent. He's like, until you say I am fine to love you in that way, I won't. I'll back off and I'll keep away, even though it's going to kill him. God. And Jaeha, I think Jaeha's like going to be matchmaker in all this. Jaeha being matchmaker, what the hell? Zeno knows what's up. Everybody knows what's up. So we need to go through this. God, this volume was probably the best one yet, but my heart is so conflicted by it. I'm like, ah. So yeah, let's go through it. Okay, so there's a lot being set up in these first two chapters about Soo-won and Hawk and Yona. And so we established that Yona's father has died recently. Her father has recently died, and he's gotten even more protective of her after losing their mom. So he's like, I don't want her going out anywhere. Soo-won is interesting because him and Hawk are age 9 at this point. Soo-won is interesting because we established a lot of things in this short story in these first couple chapters. One, we established that Hawk from the get-go has always been one to help Yona, but he's also included Soo-won in the group. Like that shot where he has Yona on the piggyback, like he's putting her, he helps her first, but then he reaches out his hand for Soo-won, is like, I want you part of us. And Soo-won, it's just, Hawk is so genuine in his love and affection and so honest with it. And Soo-won is so in admiration of it. He's like, you're just so pure in how you love someone. And he loves it, right? But here's the thing. Soo-won he knows everyone in the city. And Soo-won lies several times in this. He tells Yona that he's only been to the city a few times. But we established very early on that that's a lie. That Hawk's like, no, you've been here quite often. You've been here, and he's been in the slum. Like Soo-won has a natural born light surrounding him. He attracts people to him. It's very much like Yona, right? He attracts people to him like Yona does. Yona attracts people to her, but so does Soo-won. And you could argue it's from, you could argue that Yuhan and Il are both maybe descendants of the Red Dragon, so their children have similar attributes too. So if Soo-won and Yona are descendants of the Red Dragon, then they both have that light in different ways. Maybe Yona is just the more physical reincarnation, right? You could argue that, I guess. But Soo-won has this natural ability to attract people to him like Yona does. And he has been around the town making friends with everyone. Making friends with the people that are considered degenerates, making friends with people of all the different wards, all the common people. That's the thing. That's what's so frustrating about this story, is that even though Soo-won killed King Il, him and Yona have similar goals. Soo-won is trying to make the kingdom better, like Yona is now. They're trying to help the kingdom in different ways. Soo-won from the inside and Yona from the outside. And they're trying to help strengthen Koka. But the sad thing is that Soo-won, I feel like Soo-won realized at some point as he grew up that he had to kill King Il to make this happen. But the question is, why now? Why did he do it when he did it? Like, why at age 18 did Soo-won decide to kill King Il? Why then? What was the point? Like, what was the sign that it needed to happen now, right? Was there about to be a war from the Kai Empire where the kingdom's about to go to war and Soo-won thought that Yona and Hawk were going to be in danger? And so he's like, okay, the only way I can save my best friends, the people I love the most, is by doing this. And it's gonna make me the villain to them. It's gonna make me drive them away, but it's the only way to save them. But I'm like, but when he did that, they were gonna kill Yona and Hawk. So that's the frustrating part, is that I feel like part of Soo-won's decision to kill King Il and take the throne was to save the kingdom from impending war and to help strengthen the kingdom and make it better. But at the same time, did he choose the kingdom over Hawk and Yona? It seems like right now he chose the kingdom over Hawk and Yona. He chose to protect the entire kingdom and all of its people rather than the two people he cared about the most. And so in doing so, because they were going to die, Hawk and Yona were going to get killed by the Fire Tribe back in episode 1 of the anime. And so it seems like by choosing to save the lives of the many over the lives of the few, it drove a wedge between him and Hawk and Yona. And it's the saddest damn thing, because you see in these chapters how much they genuinely care about one another. But Soo-won paints himself as morally gray in this because we don't know. It seems like he genuinely cares about Yona and Hawk, and I believe that right now. But if it comes out that he didn't, I won't be surprised, because we've seen him lie in this episode, in this set of chapters so much. But we run into Taejun. And Taejun being older, right? And him just being like, you brats. My, how the tables turn. Like, we see so many characters connecting in this. We see Taejun, and him and his brother are at odds, and Taejun's like a spoiled brat still, and it's funny because in the last volume we see how far his character has come. We see Judo and Guntae in this, and Guntae is like, yeah, kid, beat him up. You can see instantly how Guntae had respect for Hawk even when Hawk was like age 9, right? But this whole thing with Soo-won and Ogi, Soo-won has learned who the most powerful people in the town are, and he gathers them around. It's like since age 9, Soo-won has been this like child prodigy. It reminds me a lot of Moriarty from Moriarty the Patriot. Soo-won reminds me a lot of Moriarty, quite so. But yeah, he's just like, he's been gathering all these people from the underworld to his cause, and he gets them all organized to help find Yona. And I love that Soo-won is like, Ogi, I need you to help me. And Ogi's like, shut up, brat. I'm trying to play this game. And Hawk protects Soo-won from the wine. And Soo-won, here's the thing. A lot of people ship Yona and Soo-won. I see Soo-won as totally for Hawk in this. Like, I see Soo-won totally for Hawk. I think Soo-won loves Yona as like a sister, but I don't see Soo-won feeling romantically inclined towards Yona. Like, he says she's unforgettable and that he'd never forget her. But he never once says that he loves her in the same way that Hawk loves her, right? I think Hawk romantically loves Yona, and I think that Hawk admires Soo-won like a brother, like a best friend. But if you argue that Hawk loves Soo-won romantically, I won't disagree with you. I think Soo-won romantically loves Hawk and admires Yona and loves her like a sister. And I think that Yona's the hardest person to peg down in this, because I do think that Yona romantically likes and loves Soo-won, but that betrayal has made her heartbroken. And I feel like that up until now, up until these chapters, Yona has always viewed Hawk as like a brother and a friend, but she's slowly realizing, wait, do I like Hawk more than that? I feel weird about all of this, but... And she's starting to notice things about Hawk before. But here's the thing. Hawk says, snap out of your booze, soak haze, or I'll sober you up. And that gets Ogi's attention. He likes the look in his eyes. So there's all this talk in this series about look in his eyes. And Zeno, we're going to talk about Zeno in this. Zeno does frame Hawk as he's not like the four dragons. He won't be reborn. But I always have felt like Hawk is something else. He's not just a normal human, right? But maybe he is, and he's just special. And Zeno's just like, you're special. We're going to talk about Zeno when we get to Zeno. We're going to talk about him. Because there's some funky stuff going on with him, right? But, oh my gosh. So yeah, God, I love that shot of Soo-won and Hawk together. And so Hawk realizes how amazing Soo-won is. That he is able to gather all these people together to his cause. And he's able to help them, like, look for Yona. And Hawk's like, without Soo-won, I wouldn't have found Yona. And it's like the whole town revolved. Soo-won has the power to get the town to revolve around him. Like he's a sun. He has the power to turn situations around. And that's very much like he's the sparkling beam of light. Like that's very much what he's done with the Kingdom of Coca so far. He's been slowly turning things around. But you could argue that's what Yona's been doing with the Fire Tribe. So I'm like, I don't really want to view Soo-won as an antagonist in this, because he's trying to help out the same way Yona and Hawk is. So I can't really view Soo-won as an antagonist. The only thing that makes him antagonistic is that he killed Yona's father and drove a wedge between him and Hawk and Yona. It's so frustrating. Once people realize that, they all want to get close to him. And this panel where he says that we're going to find Yona, that's the plan, and they bump fists like best bros. When he said, Your Highness, I thought he was referring to Soo-won, because Soo-won's the king now. But he says, Your Highness, I hope you're safe. So, and they're distinctly on different panels for a reason, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, Again, maybe Soo-won is meant to be the monarch, and Yona and Hawk are the sword and shield for Soo-won, and the red dragon will arrive at dawn, which is Yona. I don't know. I don't know. That part's so curious to me. But yeah, they managed to save Yona. They managed to save her. And Soo-won is so impressed. And then we see Judo coming in. And of course, Yona, she hugs Hawk as her protector. Right? And so yeah, and it shows Hawk and Soo-won at the end there getting chewed out. And this conversation that they have to one another, where Hawk's like, I'm not going to be able to come back and visit. I've done something so badly. And Soo-won's like, no, His Majesty loves you, both Yona and you. So he's not going to tear you apart. And he's like, I won't let that happen. If anyone tries to tear you apart, I'll change their mind. So it's almost like, Soo-won wanting to keep Yona and him together. And he's like, you're something. And yeah, him saying like how confident it was, he's like, the whole town revolved around you. And then Soo-won's like, well, that's great that you think that, but it's because you were there. He's like, you were strong and reliable and cool, and it inspired me. I wish I were at your level and more like you. I think about it constantly. And he says, it's so frustrating. We're right next to each other, but you feel so out of reach. And it's like both of them, I love this moment because both Soo-won and Hawk, they're like, they both admire each other so much, and they want to make themselves be at the same level as the other. And they're like, I'm not there yet. They both look up to them and put them on such a high pedestal. Ugh. And he's like, God, I love it. He's like, I have to keep training because if you're aiming to reach me, I have to be worthy of where you've put me at. So we can keep walking at each other's side. And then we cut to the present. So of course Hawk's pissed off. He's like, I've admired you and I looked up to you. And what you did to King Il is, to me, one of the most despicable things you could do. And he's like, it's such a betrayal of Hawk's trust. and Hawk's love. Hawk's like, I've loved you all these years and trained to get to your level and be worthy of the person I admire the most. And the person I admire the most did something so hurtful to me and the person I love that he's like, how can I forgive you? Like, it's such a betrayal to Hawk. And Hawk's like, what do I do now? It's like, has everything I've been doing been in vain? You know, he's like, how can you and Yona have that future I imagined? Like, where does that put us? It's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. And so we cut back to him training Yona, right? And, oh my gosh. And Jeha is just like, here's the thing. Jeha is trying to get Hawk to admit that he loves Yona, right? And he's like, do you admit your love to her? And he's like, I have a lot going on. It's not the right time. So Jeha knows that Hawk loves her, and Hawk has admitted to Jeha, because he's like, what's the point? You're the green dragon. You figured it out. Just shut up. And Jeha's like, well, if you don't admit to her your feelings soon, I'm going to take her away. And Hawk's like, yeah, you sound like you're joking, but you're kind of serious. Are you having mixed feelings, Jeha? So he's like, I know you're lying, Jeha. I know that you're not going to steal her away from me. But also, weren't you the one saying that it was the blood talking and you don't actually feel anything for her? Are you having mixed feelings? Is this your actual feelings or is it the blood? And I love that they both stare at each other like, yeah. Jeha's trying to keep Hawk at 100. And Hawk, meanwhile, is like, just stay out of it, or I'm going to start calling you out on how you feel. So, oh my God, it's just. And so then, yeah, so I wanted to get back to, did I miss something with the mangaka? I feel like I've missed something with the mangaka. I want to tie back and see if I missed any things with the mangaka and what they're doing. Did I? I think I skipped the different messages from the mangaka. I can't quite remember, so I'm going to go back and make sure I didn't miss anything. But, oh my gosh, those first few chapters were just amazing. And they set the emotional tone for how these characters feel about one another. I'm like, anime, you have so much material in these first 3 volumes alone. Why just stop? Why? I don't understand. Okay, so we did have this first thing. During the story of Yona's childhood, Soo-won's father, Yuhan, is still alive. Okay, sometime after this, something terrible happens and Yuhan passes away. Soo-won was always bursting with curiosity. He'd go into town to learn more about the world. It was fun drawing past versions of various characters for the story. Ogi is one of my favorites. The superstar, the backstreets. So, that explains a lot why Soo-won is still like in really good spirits. Because his father's still alive at this point. So I'm curious to know when his father dies, how that changes Soo-won. Because Soo-won's only 9 at this point. How that changes, I'm curious. Right? Okay. So yeah, interesting. Interesting indeed. So yeah, all right, let's go back to where we were talking about this. We have the thing with Kija. And, okay, so Jeha, this is what Jeha looks like under his coat. He has strange clothes. It's all set for fan service, right? Mm-hmm. And so then Hawk has this nightmare, all right? So Hawk has this nightmare, okay? And in the nightmare, and it is very much so, Yona says, let's go kill Soo-won. And after the chapters we've just read, Hawk, of course, it makes sense now. All the times they've talked about Soo-won and having to face the king, Hawk has been really, really uncomfortable and hesitant because we know that Hawk loves Soo-won. He loves Soo-won as much as Yona loves him. And he's so frustrated by that. So in this dream, Yona's like, let's hurry back and avenge my father. And Hawk's like, I feel like up until now, Hawk knows that Yona doesn't want to kill Soo-won. So that's why he's not felt, uncomfortable. But now he's worried about it. And so then we cut to Soo-won right behind her. And so there's multiple things in this nightmare. There's one, Hawk is afraid that Soo-won is going to want to kill, or Yona's going to want to kill Soo-won, because Hawk really doesn't want to. He wants to face Soo-won himself and confront him about all this, but he doesn't want Yona to be there. And then 2, he's afraid that if Yona is by Soo-won, Soo-won killed Il, who's to say he won't try killing Yona? And that would be the worst thing for Hawk, to lose both his best friend and the woman that he loves. And so, of course, that's why he wakes up in a nightmare. like, I feel for Hawk so badly because he's torn. Like, all these emotions are, dude. And then, I love that he sees Jeha and Kija dreaming, and Kija's like, "What are you doing to Her Highness?" And he's like, "What are you imagining?" And then, of course, he's like, "Jeha, you aren't actually dreaming. You're just being stupid." And that line, no matter how strong Her Highness becomes, no matter what she aims to achieve, it's my job to put a blade in you, even if it costs me my life. So before he meets Zeno, Hawk has resigned himself that he does not want Yona to get to the point where she feels like she has to kill Soo-won. He doesn't want her to get to that point because he knows it'll destroy her. He wants to be the one to kill Soo-won and not make her go through with that. Even though it's something that Hawk doesn't want to do, if it's the last choice he has, he's resigned himself to it, even if it's going to kill him. And that's when Zeno pops in. He's like, "Don't drive yourself into a corner. You'll take years off your life, young fellow." That young fellow line. Okay, so Zeno's curious because he seems like the book establishes he's 17, right? But he seems older than that, right? When he says young fellow, I'm like, Hawk's older than you by 2 years. Right? And there's times where Zeno is constantly like, "I'm a young kid." But then he says something really serious, like this conversation he has with Hawk. So I'm like, we established that it's the body of the yellow dragon in the myth is supposedly the body of the yellow dragon and can deflect blades. So I'm like, is it that his skin, they established his skin's not hardened like the scales. So is Zeno... Is he immune to being stabbed? Like he can't... Is he immortal? Is he constantly 17? Is he 17, but it's like Twilight, how long have you been 17? I would have a meme now where Yona's like, "How many years have you been 17? And I was like, "A while." Is Zeno immortal? I don't know. But when he says young fellow, I'm like, why would you call Hawk young if you're younger than him? Is the yellow dragon... but the other dragons have all reincarnated, and he makes a line later about the dragons being reborn. So maybe it's not that he's the original yellow dragon, but that he can live a lot longer, or that he ages really slowly. So maybe instead of there being like hundreds of green dragons and white dragons over, because we see back with Kija the span of like all the white dragons over time, like all the different generations of white dragons. Maybe instead of like hundreds of white dragons, there's only like 5 yellow dragons. Like the yellow dragons just live a lot longer and they age a lot slower because they're impervious to pain. Maybe their bodies just age, and because there's the concept that once you're born, the moment you're born, your body is already set to die. Like it's just slowly decaying over time. So maybe it's just like exponentially, like that time is lengthened exponentially because of that. Maybe that's the case. And that Zeno just ages so much slower than everybody else. So it's kind of like he's 17 in human years, but in dragon years, he's like 100. Maybe that's something to do with it. I just feel like he's a lot older than he's letting on. And we're slowly... And thank you for not spoiling me. Don't spoil me. I know I'm going to find out. We're going to get Zeno backstory eventually, but that's just... As soon as he said that, I was like, okay. But yeah, I feel like there's a faint smell of death clinging to you. Like you've got a death wish. Like he's just saying, he's like you can talk. You're one of the 4 dragon warriors. He's like, it's different for the 4 dragons. We may die, but if we do, we'll be reborn. If a dragon dies, a replacement will always come. But that's not true for you, so be more careful. He's like, there's only one of you, Hawk, and if the dark dragon dies, if the thunder beast dies, he doesn't get reborn. Which makes me think that he's the sword or the shield, right? Because if that's the prophecy, it's not that there's going to be a sword or a shield passed on. It's just like the sword or shield will appear. So I feel like Yona being born is the sign of the red dragon has popped back up, the sign of the times. And I feel like Hawk is the sword or the shield in this scenario. We just don't know. But I love that Hawk says, you guys are no more replaceable than I am. He's like, don't say that. He's like, you guys are important too. And I love Zeno's face when he says that. He's like, oh, look at you complimenting me. I love that face. I actually am starting to like Zeno a lot. A lot. I'm really starting to like Zeno. I'm like, okay, interesting. He's drawn so soft in these volumes. He's drawn so soft, like he has all this wisdom to him. Again, much more wisdom than a 17-year-old. And he's like, on behalf of all 4 dragons, Zeno thanks you. You're the dragon I understand the least. And he's like, I may not be one of the greatest dragons, but we're all here with you. So try not to shoulder everything alone. So, I don't understand if Zeno means, because when he says that reborn line, I'm like, well, then does that mean that he's a reborn version of the yellow dragon? Or when he says, I may not be one of the greatest dragons, does that mean one of the greatest yellow dragons or one of the greatest of the 4? Again, interesting, but we're here to shoulder everything with you. You're not alone in protecting Yona. And I think that's good because Hawk this whole time has shouldered a lot of the burden by himself. And I think that Zeno's like, no, it's fine. We'll protect her just like you. It's okay. You know, I love that. And then as soon as Yona pops up, Zeno's like, well, I'm not being a third wheel. Bye. It's great. But, and the whole thing with the loquat and Yona giving it to him. And her saying, she's like, I'm being selfish. Like, I feel like I'm being selfish making you train all this time with me. Like, if there's anything else you want to do, I want to respect it. And he's like, well, not really. And she goes, it's fine. I can get Zeno to train me, but it'll be hard to convince him. And that's when he says, focusing you on so much has been hard. And that's when he kisses her on the forehead. He's like, there, I've taken your advice. I did something I wanted to do. Thank you for being so considerate. Husbando Hawk. Oh my God. He's like, you said I wanted to do something. Fine. I gave you a kiss. You let me do that. That's fine. And then he goes back. And so then they decide to go to the Kai Empire. And it makes sense because we find out the Kai Empire, the southern part of it, used to be connected to the fire tribes. And there's a lot of cultural similarities, right? And so he's like, there's clearly a plant that can grow there that if we get it and bring it back to the fire tribe, then we'll be able to help everybody. And I'm like, makes sense, right? Also, my Kija and Jeha heart shipping, so hard. I feel like Jeha is the matchmaker for Yona and Hawk at this point, but I ship him so much with Kija. Jeha and Kija, they're dynamic. Oh my gosh. And I love that Jeha kind of eats his words. He's like, I said you all were on your own, but look, I have to save you, Kija. Imagine that. It's like, ah! I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then Yoon. So we get the information about the Kai Empire, and then it's not very much different. Then it seems like it's on a similar trajectory from where Kuoka had been happening, right? And the Kai Empire is very big, but it has the northern part that is the main Kai Empire, and it has the main capital, and the nomadic tribes have taken over it. And then you have the southern part where the cousin's ruling, right? The cousin has taken the throne in the south. And so it feels like they're slowly starting to disperse amongst the kingdom, kind of like what the kingdom of Koka has done. And then below it you have Sei and Zing, which are much smaller than the Kai Empire, right? So I like this recognition that Zeno minces no words. He's like, well, it's kind of like what's happened with King Il and the tribes of Koka. And they're like, shut up. And he's like, but no, it's similar. He's like, I get it. And so then they're like, what if Soo-won was trying to keep Koka from weakening? No, I believe that's exactly what he was doing in killing. And here's the thing. When he killed King Il did not defend himself at all. He just let it happen. So there's something else with that. There is so much mystery around Soo-won. There's so much mystery around Yuhan's death, around Soo-won, around what's happened with King Il. It looked like him and King Il were having a conversation when he died. I want to know what that is. Don't spoil me. But there's so much mystery. And I love that this series is giving us like little breadcrumbs. Like, here you go. We'll feed you later. As Zeno's over here eating a chicken leg. Like, you'll find out soon, eventually. Yep. I'm just waiting for it. Gah! It's, oh my gosh. Okay. So yeah. So Yoon builds these big tents that are going to be comfy cozy for them while they're in the cold region of the Kai Empire. And I'm like, Yoon and Jaeha are matchmaking as well. Yoon is like, you and Hawk need to share a tent because Hawk's going to protect you, right? And then I love that he brings up Kija. Yona's like, what about Kija? And Kija's like, I can't stay in a tent with Her Highness. He like has too much of a crush. And then they're like, they're not going to let Jaeha stay with her because Jaeha's like, I'll do it. And they're like, nope. And then there's Zeno has no combat skills. And Sina is just, no. Sina doesn't want to. And then I like that Jaeha's like, you're feeling something strange. What is this? Like, again, Jaeha's matchmaking. And I love this. I love that she's like, I don't know if I want to be near you anymore, Hawk, because I don't understand my feelings right now. I'm having uncomfortable, conflicting feelings, but I want you to be fine. And she says, I know you like to tease me, but jokes like that are throwing me off balance, and don't do that. And Hawk is like, jokes, huh? Like this whole time you think I've been joking with you. Okay. Okay. He's like, fine. And he's like, I'm not confident enough. So Hawk hasn't the confidence right now to confess to Yona that he loves her. He's like, oh, you think I'm joking? Okay, fine. Then we'll just treat it like a joke. I'll just say that I've been joking with you and I won't tease you anymore. I'll just rein it all in. And what does she do? She like starts to play with his lips. And he's like, stop teasing me. Like I'm being under control like you want me to be. It's very much like, if you've ever read or watched Modao Zushi. I'm reading Modao Zushi at this point. You should read it too. But it's a slow burn, like this series. But our two main characters in Modao Zushi, everything has been this back and forth teasing. And one character thinks that they're teasing, and it's all a joke. And the other character's like, no, I'm in love with you. It is not a joke. and the two characters, they can't communicate, and the wires are getting crossed. And it just keeps building and building and building. And I'm at the point in that story where it like boils over. And I'm getting that same vibe with this, that it just keeps bubbling. And it's different than Modao Zushi, very different. But there's that back and forth teasing. I don't know if I'm teasing. I'm being oblivious. And it's all rising to the surface. And I'm just, this entire volume has been like a kettle on boil. And I'm just waiting for it to burst, right? Oh my God, I can't. And yeah, she's like, I feel nervous. And again, Husbando Hawk being all of the respectful. Like, I will just sit here, sleep by her side, whatnot. But here's the thing. Yona is confronted with the fact that she is traveling with 6 very hot men. There's Yoon the handsome boy, there's our 4 dragons, and there's Hot. Five very handsome men. And nobody's really said anything about it up until this point. They've always said that everyone is conspicuous. But Yona has not had to deal with the fact that they are very attractive men. And she's 16. She's at that age where she's going to start noticing these things. And so coming to the Kai village, it's brought to the forefront. The idea that these girls are all like, oh my God, these hot guys are here. And of course, Yoon plays it off as they're traveling performers. It fits. They all look kind of different and odd with their clothing and garb and the giant hand. So it makes sense. They're like performers. It's theatrics, right? But they all instantly... I love that Hawk is interested in no other women. Just Yona. He's in love with Yona and that's it. Our demisexual man. I believe Hawk, if Hawk is demisexual, it's for Yona and Soo-won, and that's it. Like, the only people he loves are Soo-won and Yona. And as we've seen with Soo-won, that's not going to be possible, so Yona it is. But I also like the idea that the people here, they realize how difficult it has been to get this Isa grain. Like, it's a grain that can last up to 10 years, but they've had to work really hard for it. So Yoon is like, okay, if I can just see if the dish is going to be palatable and be something that will work, then I can go to other villages and try to get it from them, since this guy's not going to give it to me, right? And then, God, there's so much that happens in this volume. We have Kija admitting that Kija is intimidated by aggressive women because some woman forced herself on him, and he's like, never again. And so poor Kija, and Jaeha's like, interesting. So I need to take the subtle approach with you, is what you're saying, right? Yeah, no charging women. Poor poor Kija. Poor Kija indeed. I feel like Kija and Sina are the same in the fact that they don't like women being intimidating. And Jaeha is like, Jaeha is kind of the opposite, right? And Zeno, we don't know anything about Zeno yet. But again, Jaeha playing matchmaker. Yona realizing that Hawk is popular and that all the ladies like him. And then Jaeha's like, well, my standards for women are quite high. So yeah, he's pretty good looking. Well, what are you thinking there, Yona? And she's like, I'm not jealous, but I'm just noticing this. And he's like, So we have this thing from the author. In commemoration of Volume 10, my assistants threw me a surprise celebration. They got me a card and a cake with Yona on it. I was surprised that one of my friends, an assistant who moved to Fukuoka when she married, was able to make it. They all helped me so much. I'm deeply grateful to everyone. I got congratulatory messages from readers, too. Readers are the ones who make it possible for me to keep drawing Yona. Oh, and I hadn't realized it, but when I counted back, I noticed it's also been 10 years since I debuted as a manga creator. I almost missed my 10-year anniversary. I hope you all continue to support me. Oh. So, yeah. So she says, he's like, are you jealous? And she's like, no. And she doesn't hesitate. He's like, I'd say the fact that she's noticing things means she's become a little interested in Hawk. And I love that look that Jaeha gives her, like, well, that's none of my business. But you know that he knows it now. And if he knows it, then I'm wondering how long he's going to stew on that before he reveals it to Hawk. And I'm sure Hawk knows. So Jaeha knows what's up. Jaeha's seeing the writing on the wall, y'all. So Yoon convinces Yona to dance for them. And Hawk tries to tease her and be like, oh, are you going to give your little chicken dance? And she's like, I have been practicing so that I could show Soo-won my dance. And again, it's heartbreaking because Hawk realizes that he's like, yeah, you've been doing all of this for Soo-won. And you know it has to kill Hawk inside. A part of it would have to kill Hawk knowing that she still loves Soo-won and that everything was done for him. And a part of him probably kills Hawk inside because he realizes that Yona doesn't feel the same way about him that she does for Soo-won. But then another part of him probably hurts because he knows exactly what she means. He did all of these things. He got stronger for Soo-won. And she did all these things for Soo-won. Like they both became better people and got stronger for him. And then he completely threw it away. And so, yeah. He's like, he's still in your heart. And I know that it kills Hawk because he's like, Soo-won's still in my heart too. He's like, I know how you feel, Yona. But neither of them can really talk about it. And so it's just so damn hard. I'm like, ah! It's so frustrating. So yeah, and then we have the fire dance, and I love that she's in like their traditional wedding garb, and she wears like the headdress and everything, and then all the women comment about how she's drowning in handsome men, and they question her, they're like, are you interested in any of them? And she's like, well, no, not really. And they're like, oh, so they're all single, free for all, we can do whatever we want, right? And then we have another author's thing. I'm sorry that there aren't many illustrations this time. I was swamped with getting all of the art done for the main magazine, so I couldn't find time to squeeze in much extra art. I wanted to make the outfits in this volume more elaborate, but this is all I had time to do. 1 week of illustrations at my drawing speed. Well, let's just say it took forever. But volume 12 is next up. I'm hard at work drawing the chapters for the main magazine that will eventually be volume 12. I'd like to do some stories about the 4 dragon warriors and the generals. I'd like to have a story about Gunte and Yuno, but I probably don't have time. So it'll likely just keep being an idea in my head. Hope to see you in the next volume. That's so frustrating too, because as a mangaka, she's on a time commitment and a time crunch. So she probably has all these ideas and she's like, slowly but surely I'll get to them. I kind of know what that's like because I have all these ideas of videos I want to do, and it's like you're on a time crunch to get things done in like a weekly format. And I'm like, I can relate, girl. So I think I love this mangaka. She's amazing. But yeah, so Yona is totally fine. Here's the thing. This is why I think that Yona is not physically sexually attracted to any of the other dragons except Hawk. Because when they're going through this, she's like, I like the pale one, and the one with green hair, and the one with the masked Sina. And she's like chuckling. She's like, oh, they're all so popular. She's like, oh, it's funny that all the girls are into these dragons. Isn't that cute? Like, she doesn't have a reaction like when the Arrow girl says that she's going to go after Hawk. And then she's like, oh. She doesn't have a reaction. And then she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, the woman's like, I'm going to get her to bear my children. And she's like, these Kai women are so forceful and amazing. And then she asks if there's someone that she loves. And she's like, the person I love. There was someone. Like, she did love him. And I do think Yona did romantically love Soo-won. But she feels just as betrayed as Hawk does. She's like, I'll never wear that hairpin again. And I love that she said, I learned how to dance with a fan for Soo-won. She's like, I learned how to do the fan for Soo-won. And she's like, but now I traded my fan for a sword. Like, because of Soo-won, I've had to trade my life of luxury for a life of defending others. And she doesn't say it's a bad thing, but she does trade it. And she says, this is perfect. Like, it's like she's finally where she's meant to be. And that's kind of the crazy thing, is that she realizes that the fan was not Yona. The sword is her. And that's kind of tying to her being the Red Dragon, and why I'm so curious why King Il didn't want her to take up the mantle of using a weapon or anything like that. There's so much mystery still with this series. I don't want to be spoiled, but it's so great. But I just love that, trading the fan for the sword. God, there's so many good images in this. And the flute playing to represent the sword dance. And I love her, like, the way that she's drawn, like, with the sword. And then you see, like, even as Jaeha's playing it, he's like, oh. And Kija and Sina and all the villagers looking at her. And even Zeno's like, oh my gosh. And then Hawk, like, with the light around him. Mm-hmm. And they're saying it's like a dance of prayer and sorrow. And Hawk feels the same way. Like, he has so much sadness in his eyes. Because he knows she's dancing for him. And I know she's heartbroken that he's not there in their lives anymore. And I like that Aro tries to confess to him, but she can't, because she knows that his heart's with something else, right? And God, that scene at the end where Yona has the hairpin, she puts it in the box and puts it aside, and Hawk obviously sees it. And she's like, oh, I bet you're going to tease me and laugh at me for being awkward. And he's like, no. He's like, you were being beautiful. And he's like, I didn't expect praise from you. That's so unusual. He's like, it's a festival. It's polite to lie. And she's like, stop it. And then I love that he does laugh at her with her bedhead, with her rumpled hair. It's so cute. And he's like, it's been a while since I've heard you complain about your hair. And that's when he sees her grab the box. God, I love this. When he, like, it's like him putting his hand over hers and, like, holding her hand is like, and on top of the box it's like him telling her, I know how you feel about Soo-won. I get it. I feel the same way. He's like, but I also feel that way about you. And he goes in to kiss her, and then he's like, I did promise not to joke like that with you. And the thing is, he's not joking with her, but she thinks he is. So he's like, if you think this is a joke, then I'm not going to joke. Even though we know that he loves her. And he just leaves her, and she's just staring at him like, I want him to confess to her so badly, and I want her to ask him, like, how do you really feel about me? But there's all these conflicting feelings with Soo-won. This volume was so good. This volume was so good. Ah! There's so much more I can say, but oh my God, there is not an antagonist for me at this point, because I feel like Soo-won has the same goals as Yona and Hawk, but there's so much mystery in what we don't know about his motivations, about why Soo-won is doing this. Why did he kill King Il? What was the circumstance? Did King Il know what was about to happen? I know it's going to come out, but the things I hope that this series does as we go on is I want more on Zeno, for sure. I want more with Hawk and Yona. I want them to confess to each other. I know it's going to come eventually. We're only to volume 11, and there's 34 volumes of this madness so far. So, and it's ongoing, so slow burn. But I want that. And I want Yona and Hawk to be able to understand why Soo-won did what he did and to move forward. But I don't know where this is going to lead. Like, if it's going to lead them to eventually battling Soo-won, if Hawk still at this point believes he has to kill Soo-won. I don't want them to kill Soo-won, though. I want them to all three work together. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's what I want. But I don't know. So please, no spoilers. But if you want to comment down below, please feel free to. I feel like there's so much more I can say about this manga volume, but oh, my heart, y'all. It's just so good. But in any case, I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction, but I'm so curious. So we'll see. Volume 12 is next week, and if I'm looking at the beginning of this chapter, the beginning of this volume, if I'm looking at it and what we've got, we did 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65. We did 6 chapters in this volume. So if we do 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, and 71, next volume, we're going to watch the OVA for the OVA that covers those chapters. All right, we're going to watch that OVA when we get to chapter 70. We're going to watch it. So I'm going to read up to chapter 70. And then we're going to watch the OVA. And then, well, it says after chapter 70. So after chapter 70, before 71, I'm going to watch the OVA and then finish out with chapter 71. So yeah. Okay. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, next week, volume 12 in the OVA. I'm so excited. But take care, and I'll be back really soon with more Yona of the Dawn.